Staff Sergeant Aaron Vance is 31 years old, though his eyes carry the exhaustion of a man a decade older. This is his third deployment. The first two had stripped away his illusions. This third one is steadily stripping away his patience. He is a squad leader who operates on a strict, unyielding philosophy. The mission comes first, protocol keeps you alive, and hesitation gets your men killed. He is disciplined to a fault. A man who has built a fortress of operational procedure around his own humanity to ensure he can do the job required of him. Tonight's objective had seemed straightforward in the sterile, air-conditioned glow of the Tactical Operations Center. Intelligence had identified a tight urban compound in a labyrinthine district of the city. The target, a mid-level insurgent coordinator, a ghost in the network who was responsible for funneling weapons and men into the contested zones. Capturing him meant severing a vital artery in the enemy's logistical body, but the reality of the compound is far different. From the satellite imagery, the neighborhood is a claustrophobic sprawl of cinder-block walls, corrugated tin roofs, and narrow alleys that choke the air. The heat of the day is trapped in the concrete, radiating outward in waves that smell of stale spice, raw sewage, and pulverized dust. Worse, the area is densely populated. Civilians are asleep behind these thin walls. Every door kicked, every shot fired, carries the collateral weight of potential tragedy. Vance's team approaches under the cover of a moonless night. They move like phantoms, their footfalls perfectly synchronized. Vance signals his men Torres, Miller, and Has directing them toward the breach point. The tension points are clear. A high fortified wall, a single heavy wooden door, and a courtyard littered with debris that could easily conceal an improvised explosive device. They split the team. Vance and Miller take the primary structure, while Torres and Hayes secure the perimeter and the secondary outbuilding. The breach is sudden and violent. A specialized explosive charge shatters the locking mechanism of the heavy door. The concussive wave punches the air from their lungs. Instantly, the squad flows into the courtyard, sweeping their sectors. Sudden resistance erupts from the first floor of the main building. Muzzle flashes strobe in the darkness, brilliant bursts of yellow and white that temporarily wash out their night vision. Contact front. Miller barks, returning disciplined. Suppressive fire. The chaos of the skirmish is a sensory overload. Yet Vance's mind processes it with cold, calculated efficiency. He calculates angles, trajectory, and cover. He unclips a flashbang from his harness, pulls the pin, and hurls it through the shattered window frame. The detonation is a blinding, deafening thunderclap. In the critical seconds of disorientation that follow, Vance and Miller breach the room. It is over in moments. The sharp, precise movements of close quarters combat end with the heavy silence of a secured room. The threat is neutralized. Vance breathes out, a long, controlled exhalation, his eyes scanning the corners, the ceiling, the blind spots. Room clear, Miller whispers over the coms, his chest heaving slightly. Building secure. Torres echoes from the courtyard. Vance nods, lowering his weapon to the low ready. The adrenaline begins its slow retreat, leaving behind the familiar, hollow exhaustion. He moves to inspect the fallen fighter, and then the ringing begins. It is not dramatic. It is not sinister. It is simply normal. It is the sound of a world outside this dark, violent room trying to reach inside. It is profoundly, jarringly human. The standard operating protocol for dealing with unknown electronic devices in a combat zone is absolute. Do not answer. Do not touch. Do not interact. A ringing phone in the aftermath of a raid is a tactical hazard of the highest order. It could be wired to a secondary explosive charge hidden in the walls or under the floorboards, designed to detonate the moment the circuit is completed by the answer button. It could be a tracking beacon, pinging their exact coordinates to an enemy mortar team waiting miles away. It could be the insurgent leadership calling to confirm the status of the safe house. And an unfamiliar voice on the line would immediately compromise the operation and trigger an ambush on their exfiltration route. Vance knows all of this. The rules of engagement and the lessons of survival are carved into his bones. Yet, as the cheap, cheerful melody continues to loop, something feels profoundly different. The ringing does not feel like a threat. It feels like a plea. Vance steps closer, his boots crunching softly on the debris. He looks down at the fallen fighter. In the chaotic strobe of the firefight, the enemy is just a shape, a shadow with a weapon. But now, in the stillness, the harsh truth of the night vision reveals the details. The fighter is young, horrifyingly young. His face lacks the hardened, weathered lines of a veteran insurgent. He looks barely out of his teens, his frame thin under his oversized tactical vest. His hands are rough, perhaps from manual labor, but they do not possess the calloused precision of a career soldier. He is not the hardened, mid-level logistical mastermind the intelligence briefing had promised. He is just a boy caught in a war machine. The phone vibrates violently against the concrete floor, inching its way toward the boy's outstretched hand, as if trying to reach him. Vance kneels. The screen is cracked, but the backlight illuminates a name on the caller ID. It is written in the local language, an elegant, sweeping script. Over 3 deployments, Vance has picked up enough of the dialect to navigate checkpoints and read basic signs. He squints at the glowing letters. His breath catches slightly in his throat. The word on the screen translates roughly to home. The internal conflict tears at him. His earpiece crackles again. It is his platoon commander, monitoring the situation from a drone feed miles away. Vance, leave the device. Prep for 2 minutes. His training screams at him to obey. Stand up, walk away. Let the phone ring until the battery dies, until the voice on the other end assumes the worst and moves on. That is the safe play. That is the soldier's play. But the human pull is sudden and overwhelming. He stares at the word home. He looks at the boy who will never return there. He thinks of the sheer, terrifying isolation of waiting for a call that will never be answered before his tactical mind can physically stop him. Vance reaches out. He sheds his heavy tactical glove, his bare thumb hovering over the cracked glass. He presses the green button. He lifts the phone to his ear. The connection crackles with static, followed instantly by the sound of ragged, terrified breathing. Then, a voice. It is a female voice, trembling violently, pitching up and down in a panicked She is speaking rapidly, the words tumbling over each other in a desperate rush of the local dialect. Vance stands, perfectly still. The world around him, the ruined room, his squad mates holding their perimeters. The drones circling miles above fades into the background. All that exists is the small piece of plastic pressed against his ear and the profound terror. Vibrating through its speaker, he does not speak. He knows his American accent, his deep, foreign cadence, would instantly shatter whatever fragile reality she is clinging to. He forces himself to remain silent, A ghost on the line. She speaks again, her voice cracking. Vance's mind races, translating the rapid-fire syllables, grabbing onto the fragments of the language he understands. "Where are you?" she pleads. "You promised. They said you were coming home tonight." Vance's heart rate, which had settled after the raid, suddenly spikes. He grips his rifle tighter with his free hand. "Please," she sobs, the sound raw and devastating. There are men outside. They are watching the house. The tactical implications hit Vance like a physical blow. He realizes, with a cold jolt of adrenaline, that this call is not a random check-in. The insurgent network is actively mobilizing, and they are at her house. She is crying now, her words blurring together, but her panic forces her to keep talking, as if the sound of her own voice is the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. She believes she is talking to her husband. She believes his silence is just poor reception, or his inability to speak openly. "You have to run," she whispers fiercely, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, desperate pitch. The men, they are moving the trucks from the safe house on Alphareek Street. They are leaving now. Vance's eyes widen. He raises his free hand, catching the attention of Miller across the room. Vance taps his own helmet, then points a finger sharply in the air stand by high priority. Miller's posture stiffens, recognizing the urgency. Vance turns away from the body, lowering his head, keeping the phone pressed tightly to his ear. He does not reveal who he is. He cannot. To tell her the truth that her husband is gone, that an American soldier is listening to her darkest fears, would cause her to drop the phone. It would sever the feed of intelligence. It would break her prematurely. So he simply listens. He bears the weight of her grief and her terror, and as he stands there, bathed in the eerie green light of his night vision, something profound shifts inside him. The rigid, impenetrable armor of Staff Sergeant Vance cracks. He is no longer just a soldier operating in a designated theater of war. He is a man standing in the ruins of another man's life, listening to the collateral damage unfold in real time. She thinks she is saving her husband. She is pouring out the network's secrets to keep him alive. They said it happens in an hour. She cries out, a sudden spike of hysteria breaking through her whisper. The boy on the floor was never a mid-level coordinator. He was a pawn. As the woman continues to weep and babble into the receiver, the reality of the situation crystallizes. The boy was coerced. He was likely drowning in debt, or his family was being held hostage by the real insurgent leaders. They used him as leverage, a disposable body to guard a decoy location while the true operation unfolded. Elsewhere, but the call reveals something vastly more critical than the tragic fate of one reluctant fighter. It reveals a catastrophe in motion, a truck bomb, scheduled within the hour. Location, the Market District. Vance's team was never told about this. The intelligence agencies, the drone operators, the localized informants, everyone had completely missed it. They had been deliberately drawn to this claustrophobic compound to capture a phantom, while the real devastating blow was being prepared across the city. The Market District is a sprawling, densely packed hub of commerce and civilian life. Even at this hour, it is crowded with night vendors, families, and off-duty security personnel. A truck bomb detonated there would result in unimaginable carnage. Vance pulls his tactical radio mic to his mouth, his voice a low, urgent hiss. "Actual, this is Bravo 1. Emergency traffic. Stand by for Priority 1 intelligence relay." Bravo 1, this is actual. Send traffic. Why are you off schedule? The commander's voice snaps back, laced with irritation at the breach of protocol. Actual, abort the exfil clock. Target neutralized was a decoy. Real threat is mobile. I have direct human intelligence of a Vibit. Vehicle-borne improvised explosive device mobilizing from a safe house on Alfric Street. Target is the Central Market District. Time on target is less than 60 minutes. I repeat, VBIED in motion. You need to redirect ISR and intercept immediately. There is a stun beat of silence on the radio. Then, the entire tactical network erupts into organized chaos. Over the next 20 minutes, Vance stands in the dark room, the dead phone now silent in his pocket, listening to the warshift around him. He hears the high-altitude hum of a Predator drone banking sharply, its camera optics pivoting away from their compound and zooming toward Alfric Street. The radio chatter is rapid, tense, and clinical. Actual, Predator 2 has eyes on a heavy transport vehicle departing Alfric. Vehicle appears heavily laden. Suspension is bottomed out. Copy that, Predator 2. Ground assets redirecting. Viper Actual, we have a visual on the target vehicle approaching the market perimeter. Engaging intercept protocols. Vance listens, his jaw clenched so tightly it aches. He stares at the body of the boy on the floor. The enemy. The threat. The kid who just unknowingly saved his own city. Target vehicle disabled. EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team, on site. Confirmed a massive payload in the rear compartment. Threat neutralized. Good work, Bravo 1. The relief washes over the radio network. The convoy was redirected. The bomb was intercepted before it could breach the crowded perimeter. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of civilian lives have just been saved. But in the dark, dusty room of the compound, there is no celebration. Vance looks down at his gloved hands. The lines of war, the rigid boundaries between right and wrong, between enemy and innocent, between protocol and humanity have blurred entirely, dissolving into a grey, agonizing mist. He saved the market, but he had to use a widow's desperate love to do it. Back at the forward operating base, the environment is a jarring contrast to the sensory overload of the city. The Tactical Operations Center is a fortress of sterile, fluorescent lighting, humming server racks, and the stale smell of filtered air and old coffee. Vance sits in a metal folding chair in the center of a debriefing room. Across from him sits his company commander, Captain Miller, and an intelligence officer from a 3-letter agency. The atmosphere is dense with a strange mixture of reprimand and awe. You broke protocol. Sergeant, Captain Miller says, his voice flat, his hands resting on the aluminum table. You engaged with an unknown electronic device on a hostile target. You risked your squad. You risked the X. Why did you answer the phone? Vance stares at a scuff mark on the table. He could give them the tactical answer. He could say he acted on instinct, sensing an intelligence opportunity. He could say his intuition superseded the rulebook. It said home, Sir. Vance replies quietly. The caller ID. The intelligence officer sighs, adjusting his glasses. Technically, you disobeyed an immediate instruction from your overhead command. By all metrics, you should be facing an Article 15, but the intelligence you gathered from that unauthorized interaction intercepted a payload capable of leveling 3 city blocks. You prevented mass casualties tonight, Vance. So, what happens now? Vance asks, his voice hollow. Now, you go back to your bunk, get some sleep, and tomorrow we pretend your intelligence came from a reliable local informant. We don't advertise that we answer dead men's phones. The debriefing ends. The mission is logged as a profound, albeit unorthodox, success. Still, something deeply unsettling haunts Vance. It is not the memory of the raid. It is not the adrenaline, nor the faces of his squad, nor the reprimand. It is the voice, the trembling, desperate sound of a woman pleading into the dark, believing she was speaking to the man she loved. Weeks pass. The deployment grinds on, a blur of patrols, dust storms, and fleeting hours of sleep. But Vance cannot let it go. He uses his clearance, pulling favors from the intel analysts he knows, quietly tracking the aftermath of the night on Alfaric Street. He eventually finds the reports. They are dry, bureaucratic summaries of human misery. He learns that the family was displaced. The insurgent network, realizing their plot had been foiled and their safe house compromised, demanded a scapegoat. They raided the woman's home, punishing the family for the boy's failure and perceived betrayal. She was driven from the city, her home burned, her life shattered by the very men she had tried to warn her husband about. Vance sits on his cot, the paper report heavy in his hands. He realizes the agonizing paradox of his actions. He saved hundreds of strangers, but he doomed the one woman who made it possible. And the heaviest burden of all, he never told her who had answered the phone. She likely spent the rest of her life believing her husband had heard her warnings, had chosen to ignore them, and had died betraying her. Or worse. She knew the truth and lived with the horror of having spoken. Her heart to the man who stood over his body. The military is a closed chapter. Aaron Vance is a civilian now, living a life defined by quiet routines. He wears civilian clothes, drives a civilian car, and exists in a world where the loudest sound is usually a passing siren or the hum of an air conditioner. It is a Tuesday evening. He is standing in the fluorescent-lit aisle of a sprawling, mundane grocery store. The air smells of fresh produce and floor wax. Soft, unremarkable music plays from speakers hidden in the ceiling. He is looking at a shelf of canned soup, his mind pleasantly blank. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the ambient noise. It is a phone ringing in someone's pocket a few feet away. A generic, sharp, electronic ringtone. Vance freezes. The physiological response is instantaneous and violent. His heart rate doubles. His breathing turns shallow. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store seem to flicker, washing out into a harsh, monochromatic green. The smell of floor wax is violently replaced by the phantom stench of pulverized concrete, cordite, and stale sweat. His right hand instinctively twitches, dropping to his side, hovering over a rifle grip that has not been there for years. The person beside him, an older man in a checkered shirt, pulls the phone from his pocket, glances at the screen, and smiles. "Hey, honey," the man says softly into the receiver. "Yeah, I'm just picking up the last few things." Vance exhales, a long, shaky breath. The grocery store returns. The green hue fades. The phantom smells dissipate. He slowly reaches into his own pocket and pulls out his smartphone. It is black, sleek, and silent. He stares at the blank screen, his reflection staring back at him in the dark glass. The memory of that night, of the cramped, ruined room and the dead boy on the floor, washes over him with fresh, agonizing clarity. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of the night, or when the world suddenly sounds too much like a war zone, He wonders about the choice he made. If he hadn't answered, if he had just followed protocol and walked away, would the market have burned? Yes. But would she still believe, if only for a few more desperate, hopeful minutes, that her husband was alive? Would she have been spared the violent retribution of the network? He pockets his phone, his hand trembling slightly. He looks down the long, bright aisle of the store, surrounded by people who have never had to weigh the cost of a stranger's life against another's.